What's up everyone, and happy Halloween. And I know on the day I'm posting this is not Halloween, but it is Halloween for me today. And it seems that I've been very blessed on this Halloween because I've just gotten back from watching Heretic, which is going to release on the 1st of November for everyone else, but I managed to find a screening of it today. So let's check out a trailer.
Good afternoon. Mr. Reed, are you interested in learning more about the Church of Jesus Christ?
Yeah. So Heretic is a 2024 release written and directed by both Scott Beck and Bryan, and it follows two young missionaries who are forced to prove their faith when they knock on the wrong door and are greeted by the diabolical Mr. Reed, becoming ensnared in his deadly game of cat and mouse. It stars Hugh Grant in the role of Mr. Reed, Sophie Thatcher as Sister Barnes, and Chloe East as Sister Paxton. So another month goes by and we have yet another horror film from A24. And I don't say that in any way to diminish A24. I'm a huge fan of the work they do. I mean, I'm wearing a t-shirt of The Witch right now. And after that little plot description, you might be asking, horror film, Hugh Grant, weird choice, but let's get into the directors of this film first. So the most recent work I'm familiar with of Scott Beck and Bryan is the film 65, starring Adam Driver, and I did not like that film. But seeing that they were coming together with A24 to make an original horror film, and then looking back on what they have done before, it gets a little bit more interesting. Both of these guys wrote on A Quiet Place. They were both writers on the film The Boogeyman, which Sophie Thatcher was also in. I believe that was earlier this year. And despite one of those films being vastly superior than the other, these two guys seem to have a kind of taste for horror scripts. And now with Heretic, we really get to see it with something they have both written and directed. And I'm happy to report that this is a very, very well-directed film. And it's a very well-directed film, not just because of how good some of the camera movements are, or the editing is, or the direction on the performances are, but because what I think this film is really about is perception. And that perception of what we see as an audience versus what a director might want us to see and what they decide to show us. And that is kind of directing in a nutshell. If you can direct someone's eyes in a certain place and make them think one thing, that is the power of directing a film. And both Beck and Woods do it very well in this film. And the way that perception is formed is in the aforementioned movement of the camera and the way these two directors decide to show us things. Now, there's some very flashy stuff on show. There was one shot in particular where I was like, that's really, really cool. But the film is shot in this mostly moving camera style where things are panning very slowly. There's clearly a lot of sliders being used in the camera work over here. But a lot of it is done with these very wide angles, so you've got that slight distorted frame, but you really have the time to scan the entire environment as the camera moves slowly through these, and that's definitely done with intention. And then also, as mentioned previously, there comes the direction of actors, which I think is something a lot of people tend to forget when they're watching a film, is that the decisions an actor is making are not just solely coming from them. They've obviously got a director behind the camera telling them what they really want to see from them. So with the two missionaries, both Paxton and Barnes, we've got Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East, who they're both young, good-looking women, but they're playing kind of opposite sides of a spectrum. You've got someone like Sophie Thatcher, who's got a little bit more edge to her, and you've got someone like Chloe East, who's got that really typical look of someone you would see at Sunday school, if that was a thing you would ever go to. And it is evident for a lot of the runtime of this film, they are kind of playing these sort of stereotypes of these characters, but not really in the way you would expect. And again, that's just a really, really good director's note, I think. And also, just to give credit to the actors themselves, both Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East are really, really great in their roles over here. But I think we need to talk about the elephant in the room here, which is Hugh Grant. Now, for those familiar with Hugh Grant, he was obviously hugely popular in the 1990s as the blue-eyed British heartthrob, and that continued into the 2000s. And then he kind of went under the radar a little bit, but recently there's been this resurgence where he's been taking roles which you wouldn't really expect someone like him to take. He's not this really soft-spoken, heartthrob-like figure or very gentlemanly figure. If we look at a film like The Gentleman, where he was just a cockney geezer, for example, if we look at his role in the Dungeons & Dragons film, where he does play that kind of gentlemanly role a little bit, but then he is actually the villain of that film. Even in a film like Paddington as well, that was playing a little bit more against type. But over here, with what he's deciding to do with his performance and with the really good script that goes with it and with the direction of the two directors, he is kind of playing into his type, but it has never ever been this unsettling before. And frankly, it's just really great to see. He is chewing on certain bits of dialogue so well, where it almost made me laugh at certain points where you could just tell how much fun he was having with this role and with this character, where he had to play into type but also just be really unsettling whilst doing it. And he's got a lot of work to do. He's delivering these really long monologues as he's explaining certain things to these two missionaries, where It actually goes in these really wild directions, and I'll get to the script in a little bit, but I really think credit has to be given where credit is due over here. Hugh Grant is genuinely fantastic in this role, and it's one of the best performances from a villain character that I've seen in a horror film in quite some time. Now, I've spoken a little bit about the direction of this film, I've spoken about the actors, I've spoken about the camera work, but the thing I really liked the most about the film was its script. Now, it's a very wordy script, and you could say it's quite an expositional script. There are these fairly long sequences of Hugh Grant's character explaining things, but it all fits within the merit of the story for these things to be explained. As mentioned in the plot description, this film is kind of a very sinister cat and mouse game, but it almost becomes like Agatha Christie murder mystery-esque in the way things are kind of done and the way they unfold. And that's where I'll come back to that point on perception. Because with this wordy script and with this camera work, the film is all at once telling you a lot, and it's also showing you a lot. And it's up to us as the viewer to really make heads or tails of what this really means at the end of it all. Now, there is a little bit of messaging in this film. We live in this day and age where we have this term of elevated horror, a term I don't really like that much, because although there are horror films which are just there for the sake of scaring you, or like a fun slasher film or a gore fest or a comedy horror, in this day and age we go into these horror films, particularly from A24, and we expect them to teach us some sort of lesson or learn something about the human psyche or about some extreme condition. And the film does do a little bit of that here, and it's a little bit heavy-handed, but I can almost forgive it a little bit, because at the end of it, it doesn't really matter all that much, because it does come down to this feeling of perception, of what you have understood from what has been told versus what you have been shown. And I really need to give it credit for that. There was a moment where the film ended where my initial reaction was a little bit like, I'm not too sure of that, but I like that this film is trusting the viewer quite a bit more than most films do to really come to their own conclusion about what the final minutes of the film actually mean. And I don't think we really get enough of that, especially in the horror genre. So to kind of surmise and conclude, I did really enjoy this film. It's definitely not perfect in all regards, but it is definitely really interesting. It's very well directed. I think its script is really, really good. The performances are all very good in it, particularly Hugh Grant's. And this is just a really good film to go out to your theater, watch it with some friends. I think this will be a really good one for those kind of like after film discussions, because there's definitely going to be some conflicting opinions on this. I think most of it worked for me. I don't think all of it totally works, but I think most of you who have been watching my reviews know by now I just really like that we're getting consistently good horror films. They don't have to be great all the time, they just have to be good. And this is a very good one, I think. So finally, if you want a film with good performances, which is a little bit creepy and it's really stylish and it's actually kind of fun at times, this is definitely the one for you. If you're not totally a fan of having a concrete answer for everything, this one might leave you a little bit frustrated, but that's what discussion is for at the end of the day. And with that, we come to the end, and we come to the part where I ask you if you've seen Heretic. Please tell me about it in the comment section. If you're excited to see it, if you loved it, if you hated it, I want to hear everyone's thoughts on the matter. Please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, share this with your friends. All of that stuff really helps. The Adlib podcast will be getting back to regular programming as of Monday, so you can find us live on YouTube at 8:30 p.m. in Malta or 7:30 p.m. in the UK. I'll be talking about Heretic. I'm also seeing Anora on Sunday, and the review for that will be posted on Monday, but I'll be talking about both of those films over there with both Andrea and Franco. And I do actually want to give a little shout out to the Video Nasties Short Film Festival back in my home of Malta. This is a festival which was first organized, I believe the very first one was in 2020. It was just, I think, 6 films. One of my own films was there at the time. And it was made by a guy named Bruce McAuliffe A. If you know him, give him the biggest handshake of respect that you can, because that guy is working really hard to do great things and has actually built a really good budding horror community in a place where I didn't think it would be possible. The festival has gone from kind of strength to strength, where first it started as just a way to show your horror films to people in public, where last year I was a judge at the festival where there were even awards given out for things like best film, best gory moment, best jump scare, and I was a judge this year yet again. By the time you watch this, the event would have been yesterday at Eden Cinemas. And this year, the really special thing is that there were 28 films submitted, which is a huge number for any short film festival, but I think it's really testament to Bruce's effort and his passion and the amount of work that he puts in. And I want to give a shout out to them. If you can find any of the films that were shown at Video Nasties, go and watch them. There's a lot that I really, really enjoyed, and it was actually a pleasure of mine to be able to be involved in that judging process again, and I hopefully look forward to doing it again next year. But with that, as mentioned, I will be seeing Anora on Sunday, and there'll be a review for that on Monday. I'm really excited to see that film, hearing lots of great things about it, so hopefully it lives up to the hype that I'm seeing. But until the next time I see you, be sure of whether you put your faith in belief or disbelief, and thank you for watching.